Woodstock University of East Anglia. I'm not sure either speaker mentioned the possibility of terrorist groups having a mandate, perhaps having some degree of support, and whether that should determine whether we speak to them or not. We take the IRA, whether we like it or not, Sinn Féin got bigger and bigger from the early 1980s onwards. Should we look at Al-Qaeda in that way? If they're getting smaller, no need to speak to them. If they're getting bigger and bigger, the reality is we're going to have to. Okay,
I am in Solomon. I'm the Egyptian acting fellow for ICSR. I just want to comment on something that Mr. Powell had said, which is the comparison between the Hamas case and the Al-Qaeda case, because I think they're a little bit different in terms of ideology. Because even that Hamas called itself like the Islamic resistance in Palestine still has like no goals, and they have shown lately that they would accept the 242 resolution of the UN, and they would accept like the withdrawal to the borders of 1967. While I think Qaeda are after the Caliphate, they want just to spread the state of Islam and the Dar of Islam from the Pacific to the Atlantic, which is totally, of course, not feasible and not even imaginable. So they're having, as you said, sir, the word of God, they're reforming the word of God, and how can we fight that? Because for Hamas, even if they're having their violent tracks, still what they're saying is negotiable, while what Al-Qaeda is saying is totally negotiable.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of support, yes, I think that's very important. That's what I was trying to illustrate what I said about the water-based swimming. That's difficult. If you have serious political support, it's very hard to think these groups will just go away. If they don't, then that's a group like Weinhof or Bugatti Rossi, or actually, more interestingly perhaps, the dissident Republicans now in the parliament. They're groups that don't have serious political support. They can commit murder, they can create personal tragedies, but they don't actually have political significance in the end. You can try and ignore them. In a way you can't for a group like the Taliban or Al-Qaeda in my view, or the IRA, because they have real political support that you have to address. In terms of Hamas, I totally agree. Hamas is a completely different organisation. All these organisations are completely different. The approach to all of them has to be different. But Israel and others anyway, Western governments do not think that Hamas's position is negotiable. They set a series of preconditions before they're prepared to talk to them. They say their position is unreasonable. So again, we put ourselves in a position of not talking because we say their position is unreasonable. I think it's Al-Qaeda's position is certainly so not just unreasonable, it's unthinkable that we would ever. This is a matter of time. It's my point I was trying to make to Israel a second ago. Taliban in 2001 we wouldn't talk to. Now we're prepared to talk to them. Al-Qaeda in 10 years' time, 20 years' time, if they've got more reasonable demands, who knows? Maybe we would be prepared to talk to them then.
Yeah, I don't know as a factual basis whether Al-Qaeda is actually increasing its membership or decreasing it. I think you probably need to make those distinctions about those regional organizations that operate under its banner. But it seems to me we've done a terrible job in explaining, especially to the Muslim world, that 98% of the victims of Al-Qaeda have been fellow Muslims. And it seems that over time, if we can get that message out, it seems inevitable that they will decline in popularity. But perhaps it suggests if the local groups have a following, that perhaps there are local or limited grievances that can be addressed. I'm not an expert on some of these regional groups, but I'll just leave that there. As far as Hamas, it's not my understanding that Khalid Mashal actually supports Resolution 242. My sense is that as far as they've gone, and it's been the leader of Hamas in Gaza, not the one sitting in Damascus, they've said that they're willing to have a referendum of all the Palestinian people, both in the territories and outside. And if the referendum shows support for a two-state solution, then they're willing to accept it. But I'm not sure that Mashal has agreed to that. And so that's another issue about some divisions within the organization.
Okay, three questions. Let's take them in the batch, if we can. Gentleman in the purple,
John Curtis, Warsaw Institute. Mr. Reiss, you're saying that talking about Al-Qaeda smacks of peaceful. What does victory look like to you? If we can't kill any terrorists and we can't negotiate with Al-Qaeda, how do you think we're going to defeat them?
Okay,
Mary Walters, a study grad student in the Warsaw Institute. Ambassador Reiss, you talked about how if we talked to Al-Qaeda, it would be a betrayal of the 9/11. I was wondering how that would be any different than England talking to
James Blake from Tunisian. I was wondering if you could both perhaps define what you actually mean by Al-Qaeda, and whether it's a group or whether it's an ideology. If it's an ideology, how do you negotiate with an ideology?
Sure. The question about what does victory look like? The Pentagon has already described what it looks like, and they've already called this the long war. And we're talking about something that is going to last decades, in part because it is religiously motivated, it is highly ideological. It is unlikely that we will be able to either negotiate with them, as Jonathan suggests, or kill or capture them, as I would like. So it means that they're going to be around for a long time. And the real question is, how can we continue to hammer them, to marginalize them? And that's really the earlier point I made, is that we can't do this without the support of the Muslim world. And to do a better job explaining that the U.S. and the West are not the enemies of Muslims, that most of the victims of Al-Qaeda are fellow Muslims, we really haven't done a very good job of doing that. That has to be part of an information campaign that continues with the hammering. And should they ever want to change, then they know how to reach us. But I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. Really good question about what the difference is between the United States talking to Al-Qaeda and the Brits talking to the IRA. Well, for many years, there wasn't that much difference. And the British were engaging in these low-level contacts, and they had plausible deniability. You had a prime minister that refused to allow the image of Jerry Adams or his voice to be shown on radio or TV. So it was problematic, and people did think that if you talked to these guys, that it was appeasement, it was a betrayal. I think that ultimately there's a different political culture in the UK than there is in the United States. And I raised this issue with Eliza Manningham-Buller and other members of the Security Office. And partly it's because of Britain's colonial history, where, as Jonathan said, you have much more experience negotiating with freedom fighters, terrorists, the Mau Mau, others around the world. And there's my favorite quote in my book is from Eliza, where she talks about, we go from chasing them through the jungle to sitting across a negotiating table with them, to bringing them to London to be knighted and have tea with the Queen. Okay, and that's the progression. And that's sort of unimaginable for most Americans. It's just a different political culture. It doesn't have to be my way or the highway. It doesn't have to be the absolute moral certainty that we heard George Bush voice in his first term. But it's a very different culture, and I think much more difficult for Americans, certainly without a plan of preparation by the White House, for the American people to accept.